In the stifling heat of July 1497, 90 kilometers east of Lisbon, in the erstwhile hillside Moorish castle at Montemor o Novo, a summer retreat of the crown, King Manuel called the Vasco da Gama and his senior team to his court for ritual sailing instructions, blessings and conferring the royal title of Captain Major, befitting the military and navigational responsibilities given for executing the most incredible task of the time, that is the establishment of a direct maritime road to India called the India Plan. Besides addressing the glorious deeds and determination of his ancestors, he explained the imperial, religious and economic purposes of the project and introduced to the court Vasco da Gama, knighting him with the title of Captain Major and presenting him the silk banner with Holy Cross printed on it. The king also handed over him the two important letters, one addressed to the Christian King of India with a seat at Calicut, written both in Arabic and Portuguese, which says, "To establish trade in spice and oriental riches, which has made great power in Venice, Genoa and Florence," and so on. The other letter was addressed to King Prester John, a legendary Christian patriarch who was popular in European chronicles, fantasy and tradition from 12th century and was considered to rule over a Christian nation full of riches, marvels and strange creatures lost amid the Islamic caliphates and pagan lands.
After the ritual with the crown, Vasco da Gama and his senior team moved over to Lisbon for the final send-off ceremony. The night before departure, they gathered at the chapel near Belém, built by the legendary Prince Henry the Navigator, for the ritual departure of an important oceanic mission like this. They spent the night in the chapel under the aura of the Lady Belém statue, which is still preserved in the Jeronimo Monastery at Lisbon, which was built later on after the 1755 earthquake in the memory of the first sea voyage to India. Next day, on 8th July 1497, as the sun rose above the water of Tagus, the officers and seamen, sailors, soldiers with their family, friends and well-wishers squeezed into the little chapel for the final mass. Then the bell rang and cowled monks and robed priests led the worshippers to shore with lighted candles in their hands. A huge crowd gathered at shore, murmuring about the fate of the team. Finally, all knelt as priests received a general confession and absolved the departing crusader of penance for their sins. The team then rowed out to the ships anchored in the sea near downstream from the city, which was just loaded with the last provisions: fresh waters, fruit, breads, live chickens, goats and sheep. With the anchors lifting and sails spreading out, a brisk breeze filled the sails and moved forward the fleet. On board, the unnamed chronicler made his first entry. May God our Lord permit us to accomplish the voyage in His service.
Saturday, 15th July, a week after leaving Lisbon, following the Canaries current identified during the Prince Henry period, the little fleet came into the sight of Canaries Island, which they just passed by to avoid them so that the rival Castile, that is the modern-day Spain's control islands, do not know the purpose of the journey. The first taste of danger was experienced when that night a dense fog rolled in and the ships lost sight of each other. For such mishaps, Portuguese had long experiences. Therefore, following the protocol, they continued sailing towards their next designated stop at Cape Verde. On July 22nd, with a big relief, São Rafael sighted Perio and the store ship 4 days afterward, on July 26, the joyous moment came when they all united with São Gabriel. On July 27th, the next day, they anchored off the sheltered Santa Maria beach at Santiago, the largest of the Cape Verde islands. Here, the needed repairs were done for a week, and after stopping the maximum capacity supplies of fresh water, meat and wood, the little fleet headed back to sea on August 3rd. First sailing eastward to African coast and then changing course southward, they reached the dreadly region of Doldrum near the equator, where the first dead calms trapped the sea with the heat and exhaustion, followed by sudden gusts and storms, flipping them dangerously. The ships were trapped here for 2 days with some damages, and then suddenly weather calmed and they moved to the southwest and headed toward the center of the Atlantic. Now they entered into the most critical phase of the sea voyage. It was certainly not by happen chance or hunch of Vasco da Gama, rather it appears more calculative action based on several Portuguese inputs, including the 7-year back Bartolomeu Dias' experience in rounding the Cape with the help of westerly winds. It appears it was a planned and secretive mission to such a level that they left no trace of this. Even the crew were not aware, because earlier at Santiago, they were surprised why Gama instructed for the extra supplies stacking, which is normally not required when you have to move along the African coasts. The square-rigged caravels of Portuguese were less efficient in dealing with southeast winds as well as northward coastal current along the African coast. Therefore, with a little knowledge and experience, they set out southwestward in search of the great wind wheel or gyre, which can steer them fast to the Cape of Good Hope or beyond. But it was not so easy, as they had entered an environment where no European or others have ventured out. In adverse conditions, this could flip them back to the region where they started, or even take them to an unknown end of the world deep in the south. The challenge became more daunting when they crossed the equator and entered the southern hemisphere of the Atlantic, with their most reliable partner, Pole Star, disappearing in the horizon. Portuguese were the first people to counter this problem of southern hemisphere, and they have already developed some solution. They started calculating latitude by measuring the mean altitude of the sun at noon with the help of instruments like astrolabe and sidewire early date. But the sun ecliptic is not in line with the equator. The meridian angle from the equator varies on each day, which should be compensated. For this, Gama was supplied with the chart and lengthy tables and detailed cumbersome instructions for calculation of the same. However, this only derived the latitude. But for longitude, they had still to rely on guessed speed of the travel and constantly adjusting it for the direction as shown on the compass, which was not as advanced as today. Day by day, August came to an end. The ship boy chanting, "The watch is changed, the glass is running, we shall have a good voyage if God is willing," continued with the change of our glasses to the new team. With this, the daily routine at board also carried on, starting with the morning prayer, ending with the evening religious services and setting of night watches with hauling of the lantern up to the mast. Slowly, the endurance test of the ships as well as their men started creeping in. With scorching heat, food corrupted, water reeked, and with virtually no washing due to the briny nature of the seawater, the prevailing uncomfortable and unhygienic condition at board made the situation worse. All the time, the vast ocean spanned 360 degrees, meeting the horizon at the end was a depressing monotony with a little distraction. As the time passed, these scenes became very discouraging. September passed, then October. The little armada reached the southwestern extreme and now westerly winds driving it speedily back to the African coast. Wednesday on November 1, floating clumps of Gulf weed began passing the ships, indicating land nearby. On Saturday 4th November, before daybreak, the depth of the water was measured. It was 634 feet. From latitude, they found they were 30 leagues north to Cape of Good Hope. Ultimately, at 9 o'clock, the watchout sighted the land. It was a joyous moment for all. Pedro de Alencar, the pilot of Gama, who was with the Bartholomew Diaz in his last voyage in doubling the Cape, failed to identify the place. It took 4 days to find the correct anchoring ground, and on 7th November they landed on the low land with a broad bay which was named Santa Helena. It was a grueling and grinding 93 days sea journey without a glimpses of land and proved to be a giant step in the world of sea voyages. Gama, pushing his crews and ships to the limit, found the fastest and safest sea route to the Cape, avoiding the contrary difficult coastal winds and currents.